Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Welcome to the Daily Cash Flow. My name's George Robson.
I'm Peter Siegel.
Peter, the pandemic has thrown a lot of things out of whack. People don't know what to do with it. Markets are changing. People are unsure about pretty much everything. Yet, just the other day, you were talking about how you were finding comfort in multifamily real estate.
I do, yeah.
Where is that comfort really coming from? Is that just a gut feeling that you have, or what makes that a trustworthy thing, something to have faith in?
Yeah, good question. So I think a couple of places. First of all, historically, multifamily real estate has performed better than most other asset classes over time. Through the ups and downs and in and outs of lots of different crises, multifamily has always persevered. But more specifically, George, I think of some recent data that came out last year. So the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies released a report saying that there's going to be 4.7 million new renters by 2025. Now, 4.7 million is your number. Most of these renters are going to be concentrated in the higher density, higher population areas, the Northeast Corridor, the West Coast, and some places in between. But by and large, the high density areas are going to see most of that renter population. So 4.7 million going to a few different places. So if you're operating and owning in a supply constrained market, now you know that's what I do. I own and operate in the New York metro area and the New Jersey Shore and places nearby. So if you're in a supply constrained market, which is a key factor to be able to succeed in owning multifamily, you're going to receive a lot of the benefit. So what's going to happen when those 4.7 million renters come online? They're going to be seeking housing that they can afford. The definition of affordability in our business is not to exceed a 35% income to rent ratio. So if your income is $50,000, you're not going to be able to afford anything that costs more than $17,500 a year divided by 12 gives you your monthly rent that you should be maxing out at. So of the 4.7 million renters, we know that most of them are going to be making between $30,000 and $80,000 a year. That is the largest typical subset of our population, of our working population. So if they're making $30,000 to $80,000 a year, they're going to be seeking apartments that are $1,000 to $2,000 a month. And in our densely populated supply constrained areas like the West Coast, like the New York MSA, like the Northeast Corridor, $1,000 to $2,000 a month is mid-price product. It's not really low end, certainly not the high end. 4.7 million new renters coming into your area, supply constrained area. If you're in multifamily, you're going to see occupancy rates increase, vacancy rates decrease, you're going to see absorption increase, and it's going to alter the supply and demand balance that we are currently experiencing. So you're talking about almost 5 million renters over a 5-year period. That's 1 million renters a year. That's a good amount of absorption to take advantage of. I mean, I'm seeking to grow during this time. I mean, I want to be there to capture that.
So 4.7 million, that's a lot of people being added to the market. How do you respond to that new demand?
Well, if you want to grow, we've talked about growth here before. If you want to grow, you have to respond. So I appreciate the question. You're either going to build ground up and build new product for these people to look at and apply for and sign leases in, or you're going to buy more buildings. I've grown my business over 30 years by scaling and growing and buying more buildings, acquiring new assets. And assets under management, UAM, is a key metric in our business. So we'll come back to that and speak more about that, I think, in future episodes. But I plan on responding by growing, buying more. And I don't build ground up. So my answer to you specifically is by buying more.
Buying more.
Yeah.
So with all this growth that's going to be necessary with 4.7 million new renters, How do you scale? What are the steps that you specifically are taking to grow for your business?
That's a good question. So I have a secret out there for everybody. If you're interested in multifamily business and investing in multifamily operations, here's the secret. Multifamily is a box. Become an expert in one box, scale the box. Owning one unit is the same as owning two. It's the same as owning four. It's the same as owning 400. It's the same as owning 4,000. If you can become an expert in managing and operating the one box, the box can be an apartment in a building. It can be an entire building of apartments. Whatever your box is, if you can become an expert at operating that box as a business, then growing to capture more demand is just a matter of scalability. It's not a matter of product feasibility or product efficacy, which we see in other businesses that have that risk and those challenges. In multifamily, we really don't. So if you're in a supply-constrained area and you're already an expert in your market and you want to capture more of that market, just simply duplicate and replicate the same thing that you've already done successfully. It's very easy to do, or at least it sounds easy to do the way I say it.
So let's get into that a little bit. So what are the kind of systems or protocols that you have to put in place in order to scale like that?
I've been in this business about 30 years, and I've studied lots of different types of businesses before I chose to come into this one. The biggest thing that you can do for growth and scalability is to systemize recurring and repetitive tasks so that you, as the owner, as the leader, can focus on the non-recurring, one-time, one-off tasks that actually require more amount of time and attention to execute. So every business, and not only businesses, but everything in life has a set of recurring and repeating events and sets of non-recurring and non-repeating events. And I find that the most successful people in business and in life are able to weed through the forest of those different events, and things that are recurring and repeating can be systemized. You can make calendar notes. You can set reminders to manage them and keep up with them. You can hire talented people to then manage the repetitive nature of those events. If things are repetitive, they're known. You can plan for things that are known. We've talked about certainty here before. So if things are certain, you can then take the required steps to plan for and execute on those certain occurrences. If things are uncertain, then you need to be able to sit back and spend time and focus on those. So what I do in my business is I've hired a very talented team to manage all of their recurring day-to-day tasks that occur in our multifamily operations. We've got a great leasing department. We've got a great property management department. We've got a great project management department. We've got great financial management, investor relations. So all of those things that come up in our day-to-day lives and running our business can be systemized and managed because they're repeating. They occur every day, every week, every month, and several times a year in our cycle, right? Every business has a cycle. So our cycle is rent comes in first of the month. We call it rent week. Money has to get deposited. Rents have to get credited to the right accounts. After that, we have about 2 weeks of dealing with other recurring tasks, maintenance requests, things that don't happen on the first of the month, then happen the rest of the month. And then towards the end of the month, we get to paying bills. We start preparing for the next rent week. We have move-outs that happen at the end of the month. We have move-ins that happen at the beginning of the month. I mean, these are known events that happen very regularly and at very known dates. So we're able to plan for those events.
So those are the things that you kind of systemize for. Are there, what are some examples of things that are unplanned that you kind of have to have more hands-on, more nuanced, soft skills?
Yeah, in my business, I'm the one that manages all of the non-recurring events. So for me, that's acquisitions, financing, certain parts of investor relations, HR and employee management and team building, writing the business plans for each asset that we acquire, choosing design specs and then handing those specs off to my project management team so that they can then execute. Things like that are what I spend my time on, and I find that it really works for me, and I've seen parallels with other businesses that have scaled as well, and I've learned a lot from looking at them, and I've learned a lot from, believe it or not, from McDonald's. So if you're in business, perhaps at some point in your studies or in your career, you've you've at some point come across McDonald's as an example of something. And really now today, it's any type of multi-unit retail business, but one of the original ones was McDonald's, so let's just stick with McDonald's. But what McDonald's got great at, and they got great at very quick, and it's genius and it's so simple, is that the truck pulls up to the store, the red box comes off the conveyor belt, the employee takes the red box, puts it on the red storage shelf in the back. And then when they need to stock the shelves, they open up the red box, they pull out the red product, they stick it on the shelves, and then when a customer goes up to the cash register and says, I'd like the double cheeseburger, no sesame, extra pickles, no onions, give me double ketchup, all of those things, the cashier simply pushes the red button and nods yes right away. And the red button triggers the receipt to go up in the back. Person takes the receipt, they pull the red wrapper out, they stick it in the microwave or whatever the cooking device may be. They hit the red button on the microwave beeps, they take it out, they put it in the red wrapper, they put it in the red box, and they send it off to the cashier. The cashier says, here's your double cheeseburger, no sesame, double ketchup, no onions. And you go, wow, look at this great thing that just happened. When behind the scenes, in the back, what it really was the red dot just following its way down the path from delivery to customer. And it's really quite genius. And if you can take that theory and apply it to so many things, you're going to be able to do so much more in a day and than your competitors will. You'll be able to do so much more in a day than your competitors will. You'll be able to accomplish so much more in a day that you'll accelerate your own success. You'll accelerate your own business's growth. So I encourage everybody to think about systems, streamlining, efficiencies, making things faster and smoother, removing steps, not adding steps, and really cutting to the simplification and core of what can get a task completed. The more you can do that, you'll be able to really just, it's like throwing kerosene on a fire, and your business will explode. And we've done that here.
Got to go home and start color coding my bedroom.
I suggest you look into it.
So you're looking to grow. We've already covered the fact that with all these new customers, growth is and you've actually mentioned before that you're always growing. Their acquisition is a kind of a constant process that you're going through. How do you underwrite new business deals? What's the metrics that you use for that?
Good question. So in our business, commercial real estate, there's a very standard set of underwriting that people embark on. And I'm talking about everybody from the banks, the appraisers, the insurance companies have their own way to underwrite. We hear all the time about insurance underwriters. Well, this is what we're talking about. And then the owners and operators who are actively seeking to purchase, as well as the sellers and the brokers. I mean, everybody's got to be involved in this dialogue. So I underwrite in the traditional manners, plus I have a secret that I'm going to share with you. So the traditional manners of underwriting for commercial real estate are income and expenses, cap rate, replacement costs, price per unit, those types of metrics. I blend together and always make sure that they're in line with what the market is doing. But George, I operate with the market, but I also operate differently and above and beyond the market because I try to succeed and I'm competitive and I want to win. And I want to outperform my market. So what I do is I look for a certain secret key. And for me, the secret key is this. I'm looking for the delta. I want to know the delta between the in-place rents and where rents can ultimately go to once I execute on the business plan that I've created for this particular building. So the delta combined with, for me, the cap rate, those are the two most important ones. 99% of the time, the delta combined with cap rate will yield my purchase decision. Sure, replacement cost is important. You should know it and it should be part of your underwriting and have it up in front of you to reference. Price per unit is a very common metric that's used by everyone a lot of the times because it's very simple and it boils down to a very easy number. Oh, I paid $75,000 per door. I paid $100,000 per door. I paid $150,000 per door. And very quickly, people in the conversation know what you're talking about. I go further, and I think that if you want to be successful in value add and in multifamily operations, you have to go further. So I look really at the delta. If rents are currently $800 a month and we are able to install a new appliance package, or maybe change up a bathroom, or maybe go from carpet to hardwood flooring, or carpet to some other type of flooring. We're currently using luxury vinyl tile, LVT, in our renovations. Then we know that we can get $50, $100 a month more for new appliances and new flooring. And that will drive the underwriting decision to buy or not buy at the asking price that the seller is wanting to get. And I want you guys to think about this, because if you're out there trying to do multifamily investing on your own, of course you need to be looking at price per unit, replacement cost, and cap rates, but they don't exist in a vacuum. You have to know how to blend all of that information together and look at the delta. You have to know the delta between what rents currently are and where rents can be if you do X, Y, and Z being executing on the points in your business plan that you're writing for that asset.
And the key here seems to be really knowing your market, and that you talked about.
You have to be an expert in your market. I think we've talked about that a few times here before. You have to be an expert in your market. Don't just dive in the pool without knowing how to swim. You have to know what other buildings like yours in your area are getting for rents. You have to know what other unit types at the size that yours are getting for rents. You have to know what carpeted units are getting versus LVT flooring units. You have to know what appliance package upgraded units are getting versus the traditional standard apartment white stove and white refrigerator appliance packages are getting. You have to know what apartments that are partially below grade on a sub first floor location are getting versus a second or third floor, and if those second or third floor units have a balcony or not. All of those things will factor in to what the price will be that you're able to rent those units for, and you need to know the details of what drives pricing in your market, for sure.
So let's say someone doesn't know all those things and doesn't have those details at their disposal, and they still want to get into this kind of deal and still want to be able to profit from the kind of security and the comfort that we've already spoken about. What do they do?
So you have to find a local market expert that invites you to invest with them. If you don't have access, or if you don't have the time to seek out those assets, to seek out those opportunities, to write those business plans and hire the staff and manage all of the rent and maintenance and legal and municipal issues, you have to invest with someone who's an expert at it. So I invite everybody to go to siegelcapital.com, take our accredited investor questionnaire. This is for accredited investors only. And if you have a business, or if you're successful in your career right now and you wish that you were exposed to income producing real estate opportunities, but you're just not, then go to siegelcapital.com, take our questionnaire. If you're an accredited investor, I want to hear from you. DM me, send me a message, email me, call me, whatever you have to do, but reach out, because I'm buying opportunities all the time, and we're opening this up for accredited investors to join in.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, George.
And I'll see you next time.
Is that all you got for me today, George?
That's all I got.
Usually you have a zest quest, you have a personal question, you want to talk about why I'm different than the other people in the marketplace. Come on, man.
Well, I do actually have one. I do have one zest quest. What's something that keeps you up at night in a bad way, and what's something that keeps you up at night in a good way?
Wow. Okay. So in a bad way, so I tell people that in my business, I worry about two things and two things only: an unprecedented act of Mother Nature and an unprecedented act of terrorism. Those are the two things that keep me up at night for my business. If those things happen, then they're not just bad for business, they're bad for society and humanity and our neighbors and families and everybody. It's a problem. So when I say an unprecedented act of Mother Nature, I'm not talking about this pandemic that we're going through, because we've already discussed in a few different ways why multifamily is persevering through this pandemic right now. So what I'm referring to is a Hurricane Sandy times 50. We saw the 100-year storm. I'm talking about the 1,000 or million-year storm. That keeps me up at night. And if a dirty bomb goes off in New York City, God forbid, these dirty bombs have a multiple mile radius that they can affect these areas in a great distance. That's obviously a horrible thing and a bad problem. But things like this is what keeps me up at night. Interest rates moving up and down don't keep me up at night. I get that question a lot, and my answer is always the same. I'm very comfortable with the movement of interest rates because multifamily is positioned as a hedge against inflation. It operates successfully during times of low rates and high rates. Look, if you're over levered, Nothing's going to solve for that. You're over-levered. I don't over-lever. Back in the 2008 economic crisis, we saw property owners that had 80, 85, 90, even 95% leverage on their buildings. I mean, these banks were giving money away. They weren't underwriting. It was crazy. We remember this time quite well. And they fixed a lot of that systematically since then. But even still, as an operator, as an owner, you have to be disciplined and diligent in how you invest and operate. I won't exceed 70 or 75% LTV, so I won't be over-levered. So the movement of interest rates isn't one of those things that keeps me up at night, despite what people think in our industry. And I think what keeps me up at night in a good way is just being lucky enough to have lots of happy thoughts and very happy things in my life, and fortunate enough to experience those things on a daily basis, and taking a moment or more than a moment to sit back and smile and feel really good about those things and to appreciate those things keeps me up often at night, but in a good way. And
speaking of those things, you mentioned a story just before we started rolling about your daughter taking a cue from...
That was this morning at breakfast.
Yeah.
My poor wife, I mean, she's got to listen to me and all of my positive thinking and my business bullshit all day long, and my vid bites and my sound bites. I mean, she probably wants to hurl me off a roof sometimes. I never stop with it. But so this morning at breakfast, we were eating, we're at the table, and my daughter comes downstairs all prepared for the day. She's like, "Look, I dressed myself. I'm so excited." And we had breakfast, and then she decided she didn't like what she was wearing anymore, and she got really pouty and really whiny and said, "I don't like what I'm wearing anymore." She kept saying, "I don't like what I'm wearing, I don't like what I'm wearing." And we couldn't take it. Finally, my wife said, "If you want things to be different, you got to make things different." And I stopped, and I went, "Whoa, that's like, I got to write that down. Like, that's what we do here, George, you and I all the time." I was high-fiving her. She was like, "What?" I'm like, "You just gave me one of your positive thinking, motivational success quotes, and you didn't even know it."
Gonna have the whole family on someday.
Oh, I was so psyched. So it was a really happy moment this morning, and my daughter went right upstairs. She went, "Yeah, you know what, Mom, you're right." She went right upstairs. She changed her clothes, and I was applauding and high-fiving my wife, and she was looking at me like I was crazy and couldn't wait for me to get out of the house. And
if you don't like how things are, you got to change it yourself.
If you're not happy with the way things are, you got to make the change. You have to make the change. No one else is going to make it for you. You have to make it.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Thanks, George. That was good.
That's a solid round of Zest questions.
It was.
All right. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, George. Thanks, everybody.
If you like what you just heard, you can subscribe to The Daily Cash Flow on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'd love it if you left us a review. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at SiegelCap and on Instagram at Siegel.cap. As always, if you're an accredited investor, go to SiegelCapital.com and take our survey to see if you qualify to take part in one of our apartment building deals. That's SIEGEL Capital.com.